What if I told you that three of history's greatest superpowers all collapsed following the exact same pattern, and that the United States is currently walking down that same path, step by step, almost like we're reading from a script that's been played out before? And what if I told you we're not at the beginning of this pattern, but deep into stage 5 of 7? This isn't speculation or fear-mongering. This is historical fact. And by the end of this video, you'll see exactly where America stands in a sequence that has destroyed empires for over 500 years. Let me paint a picture that should make your blood run cold. In 1590, Spain controlled half the world's gold and silver. Their empire stretched across 4 continents. Their currency was accepted from London to Beijing. Within 80 years, they were bankrupt, irrelevant, and never recovered. In 1914, Britain ruled the largest empire in human history. The pound sterling was the global reserve currency. Within 40 years, the empire was gone, and they became America's junior partner. In 1991, the Soviet Union was a nuclear superpower with global influence. 900 days later, it ceased to exist. 3 empires, 3 complete collapses, all following an identical 7-stage pattern. And here's what should terrify you about our current situation. The United States has already completed 5 of these 7 stages. Before we dive into this pattern, you need to understand what imperial collapse actually means. It doesn't start with foreign invasion or military defeat. It starts with economic exhaustion. The empire extends beyond its ability to sustain itself. Too many military commitments, too many promises, too much debt. At first, the decline is invisible. The currency still functions. The military still wins. But underneath, the foundation is cracking. Then comes the acceleration. When allies start hedging their bets, when enemies test boundaries, when your reserve currency status begins to erode, the very advantages that made you powerful become vulnerabilities. Your currency floods back home. Your global military becomes unsustainable. Your promises become empty words. This isn't theoretical. This is exactly what happened to Spain, Britain, and the Soviet Union. And it happened because they made the same decisions we're making right now. Let's examine the first global empire that followed this pattern. Spain in the 1500s and 1600s. After Columbus opened the Americas, Spain became the world's first true superpower. They conquered the Aztec and Inca empires, controlling the richest gold and silver mines ever discovered. By 1600, Spanish ships were bringing home over 400 tons of silver annually. The Spanish real became the world's first global reserve currency. This is where the pattern begins, with a nation that controls the world's money and believes that makes them invincible. Stage 1 was military overextension. Spain fought wars simultaneously on 4 continents, against the Ottoman Empire in the Mediterranean, against France and Italy, against Protestant rebels in the Netherlands, against England's navy. By 1580, half of Spain's revenue went to military spending, and it still wasn't enough. Stage 2 was currency debasement. When Spain couldn't pay its bills through taxation, they did what every failing empire does. They debased their currency. Silver coins that were supposed to be pure became 50% copper, then 75% copper. By 1600, Spanish silver coins contained barely any silver. Merchants stopped accepting them at face value. Inflation exploded. Stage 3 was the debt spiral. Spain borrowed constantly from Italian and German bankers. By 1557, less than 20 years into King Philip's reign, Spain declared bankruptcy. They defaulted again in 1560, 1575, and 1596. 4 bankruptcies in 40 years. Each time they promised reforms. Each time they went right back to borrowing and spending. Stage 4 was loss of productive capacity. Here's the paradox that destroyed Spain. Having unlimited money made them stop producing. Why grow food when you can import it? Why build ships when you can buy them? Spanish nobility considered work beneath them. All the wealth from the Americas flowed straight back out to pay for French wine, Italian silk, and Dutch goods. Spain became merely a conduit for wealth, producing almost nothing themselves. Stage 5 was social decay. With the economy failing, crime exploded. Productive citizens emigrated to countries that were actually building and creating. Spain was left with bureaucrats, soldiers, and priests, no one creating wealth, everyone consuming it. By 1700, the Spanish Empire was economically dead. They went from world superpower to regional European country in less than a century and never recovered. Now let's jump forward 300 years to Britain, the empire where the sun never set. At its peak in 1922, Britain controlled 25% of the world's land surface and 400 million subjects. The pound sterling was the global reserve currency, and London was the financial center of the world. But Britain was already following the same pattern as Spain. Stage 1 was military overextension. By 1900, Britain had military commitments on 6 continents. When World War I started, they faced a choice: stay neutral or bankrupt the empire to win. They chose to fight. The war cost Britain over $40 billion. That's $1 trillion in today's money. They borrowed heavily, mostly from the United States. Stage 2 was currency debasement. The war had drained Britain's gold reserves. They'd shipped gold to America to pay for weapons and supplies, but they tried to maintain the pound's pre-war value anyway. In 1925, they went back on the gold standard at the pre-war rate. The problem? The pound was overvalued. British exports became too expensive, unemployment rose, and they had to keep interest rates high to defend the currency. By 1931, they couldn't hold it anymore. Britain abandoned the gold standard. The pound lost 25% of its value overnight. Stage 3 was the debt spiral. Britain never recovered from World War I debt. Then World War II started, costing another $120 billion. By 1945, Britain owed more than their entire GDP to the United States and Canada. Stage 4 was loss of empire. In 1947, Britain gave up India, their crown jewel. Over the next 20 years, they lost everything: Africa, the Middle East, Southeast Asia, the Caribbean. By 1970, the British Empire existed only in history books. Stage 5 was currency collapse. The pound kept falling. What equaled over $4 in 1940 was worth just over $2 by 1980. The global reserve currency became a regional currency. Britain tried to maintain the pretense with their UN Security Council seat and nuclear weapons, but everyone knew the truth. They were a former power, a museum of what used to be great. Now, let's examine the most recent example, the Soviet Union, 1945 to 1991. After World War II, the USSR emerged as a nuclear superpower that believed they were the future. For 45 years, they competed with America militarily, building more tanks, more missiles, more troops. But beneath the surface, their economy was dying. Stage 1 was military overextension. The Soviet Union spent 15 to 20% of GDP on the military, triple what America spent. They had to match American technology and reach while supporting Cuba, Syria, Vietnam, North Korea, Angola, and Ethiopia. The cost was unsustainable. Stage 2 was economic stagnation. The Soviet economy stopped growing in the 1970s. Oil revenue kept them afloat, but nothing else worked. By the 1980s, a country with some of Earth's best farmland couldn't feed itself because central planning destroyed innovation and productivity. Stage 3 was currency collapse. The ruble was never a real currency internationally. Even Soviet citizens didn't trust it, using dollars when they could get them. By 1985, oil prices dropped and Soviet gold reserves were depleting. Stage 4 was loss of empire. In 1989, the Berlin Wall fell. Eastern Europe left in a year: Poland, Hungary, Czechoslovakia, Romania, East Germany. The Soviet government couldn't stop it because they were broke. Stage 5 was complete collapse. On December 26, 1991, the Soviet Union ceased to exist. 900 days from Berlin Wall to complete dissolution. Not from war or invasion, but from economic implosion. The military couldn't be paid. The government couldn't function. A superpower with 30,000 nuclear weapons collapsed from internal economic failure. The pattern played out again: overextension, currency failure, debt, loss of empire, collapse. And here's what should keep you awake at night. The United States is following this exact same pattern stage by stage. Stage 1, military overextension. The United States maintains over 750 military bases in 80 countries. We have troops in 150 countries. We're committed to defending Europe through NATO, defending Japan, South Korea, the Philippines, fighting in the Middle East, countering China and Russia simultaneously. Our military budget is $850 billion annually, more than the next 10 countries combined. And we're stretched thin. If China invades Taiwan while Russia pushes into NATO territory and Iran closes the Persian Gulf, we can't respond to all of it simultaneously. We're overextended, just like Spain, Britain, and the USSR. Stage 2, currency debasement. In 1971, Nixon closed the gold window. The dollar became pure fiat currency. Since 2000, the money supply has increased 400%. Since 2020, we've printed over $6 trillion. The dollar has lost 98% of its purchasing power since 1971. We're not mixing copper into silver coins. We are printing unlimited paper. The mechanism is different, but the result is identical. Stage 3, debt spiral. The United States owes $36 trillion, 120% of GDP. Interest payments alone approach $1 trillion per year. We're spending more on interest than on defense. We run deficits every year, even during economic growth. We borrow to pay interest on previous borrowing. That's the textbook definition of a debt spiral. Stage 4, loss of productive capacity. America doesn't make things anymore. We design, we finance, we consume, but we don't produce. Our manufacturing base has been gutted and shipped overseas. We import $800 billion more than we export annually. We're dependent on foreign supply chains for everything: medicine, electronics, steel, even military components. Just like Spain became dependent on imports while silver flowed out, we're dependent on imports while dollars flow out. Stage 5, social decay. Trust in institutions is at all-time lows. Crime is rising in major cities. Homelessness is exploding. Drug overdoses kill 100,000 Americans annually. The best and brightest are leaving or checking out. Fertility rates are collapsing. Political dysfunction is total. We can't agree on anything, can't fix anything, can't build anything. The signs of decay are everywhere. We're at stage 5 of 7. The Soviet Union made it to stage 5 before complete collapse. Britain lasted through stage 5 but lost their empire. Spain took longer but followed the same pattern. Stage 6 is loss of reserve currency status. That's when allies start diversifying, when trade moves to other currencies, when the dollar comes flooding back home because no one needs to hold it anymore. We're seeing early signs. BRICS nations developing alternatives, central banks buying gold, China and Russia trading in yuan and rubles, Saudi Arabia accepting yuan for oil. The cracks are forming. Stage 7 is collapse, not gradual decline, sudden implosion. When the reserve currency fails, when the debt becomes impossible, when the military can't be funded, empires don't decline gracefully. They collapse quickly and brutally. 3 empires followed this pattern: Spain, Britain, the USSR. Each believed they were exceptional, that the rules didn't apply to them. They were wrong every time. We're telling ourselves the same lies right now. We're different. We have technology. We have the dollar. We're America. But the pattern doesn't care about exceptionalism. The pattern is mathematical. You cannot spend beyond your means forever. You cannot maintain empire without productive capacity. You cannot debase your currency without consequences. Since 2020, we've accelerated every stage. Printed more money, increased debt, extended military commitments, hollowed out production, fractured society. We're not walking the path anymore. We're sprinting down it. Maybe we'll find a way out. Maybe America can do what Spain, Britain, and the Soviet Union couldn't. Maybe we'll reform, rebuild, restore. Maybe this time really is different. But the pattern says otherwise. The math says otherwise. And history, which has watched empires die the same way repeatedly, says we're about to learn the lesson the hard way. The sequence is locked in once you complete stages 1 through 5. The only question is timing. Maybe we have 10 years, maybe 5, maybe less. But the pattern says collapse is coming. And when it comes, it won't be slow. It'll be sudden, a currency crisis that triggers a debt crisis that triggers a political crisis. Overnight, the superpower becomes a cautionary tale. 3 times it happened before. The pattern says we're next. If this opened your eyes to where we actually are in the sequence, hit that subscribe button, because when we hit stages 6 and 7, you'll want to understand what happened and why. The answers aren't hiding in the future. They're written in the past, and history never lies about how empires end. This is just one piece of the bigger picture. Subscribe if you want to understand the full context and how to better protect yourself in uncertain times. And the video on screen takes this story one step further.